sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Erez Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. This week we are joined by two very distinguished guests, Kevin Warren, Commissioner of the Big Ten, former CEO of the Minnesota Vikings, and Adam Newman, Chief of Staff, Strategy and Operations and Deputy General Counsel of the Big Ten, graduate of Yeshiva University. This is very special because this is a very special welcome to the Big Ten out west. Commissioner Kevin Warren, great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, great to see you, Rabbi. Good to be here.
Thank you. And Adam Newman, great to see you, Adam. Thanks so much.
Great to see you too. Thanks for having us.
So first of all, in our tradition, we say, Bruchim habayim, boachem l'shalom. You should come in peace. And we want to just thank you for the warm welcome to the Big Ten, UCLA, USC, right down the street down here in Westwood, a couple of miles from USC. So what do you have? Greetings to Los Angeles. What do you say?
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be on your show and your podcast. And we're excited about welcoming two incredibly spectacular and historical universities in USC and UCLA into the Big Ten family. I know it's a couple years off. There's a lot of work to be done between now and then, but we look forward to the day that we can be all together.
I just want to talk about world peace for a moment because we're really splitting our synagogue between Bruins and Trojans. So if we can do it, I think there's really hope for the future here as well.
I'm looking at any way we can help. We're interested in it. So, but we're looking forward to having two incredible new members to the Big Ten family.
So in this podcast, I like to say that we don't talk about trade deadlines or box scores, but we talk about the heart and soul. And Commissioner and Adam, your stories are really about heart and soul. Two people from very different backgrounds coming together because of the love of the game, because of the love of the ball. And the reason I connected with both of you, or actually when Adam, you followed me on Twitter, and on Twitter, you posted Commissioner Warren's letter on Big Ten stationery to Coach Elliot Steinmetz, the head of coach of Yeshiva University, a friend of ours, Rabbi on the Sidelines. And it wasn't just about the 50-game winning streak at Yeshiva University, but it was about, Commissioner Warren, your story growing up as an African-American in Arizona and your father's participation in the United States military about going over to Europe and seeing the devastation of the Holocaust. Can you share that story about how you first learned about the Jewish people, the Holocaust, and the connection that we need to make between the African-American community and the Jewish community?
Yeah, growing up, as you said, my father was a soldier in the military and fought in World War II. And around our tables, he ended up becoming, played college football at Arizona State and got his master's and doctorate degree from Arizona State. So he was really focused on education. My mother was highly educated, was a school teacher, ended up being a librarian. She loved to read. So there were always encyclopedias and books. But our conversations around the dinner table really focused on world peace and doing what's right and equality and that people are all the same. And my dad would share just very powerful, very emotional stories about the Holocaust and to make sure to hold us all accountable, to make sure that this would never happen again. We talked about slavery. We talked about the Holocaust. We talked about many of these issues. And then I ended up, one of my most dear friend in high school was a young woman by the name of Abigail Klinger. And her father was actually, in the Holocaust in one of the war camps. And so that even allowed me to go even deeper and learn about just the atrocities that we had faced as a people. And so it's always been a center of my mind and in my heart and in my spirit and my soul to make sure that I'm doing everything we possibly can to break down walls, to build bridges between communities, between different races and religions and just different thought process to make this world a better place. And we just need to make sure that we stick together as a people, put our differences to the side, come together, and make sure some of these things that our country and the world has had to deal with, that we never let it allow for us, our children, or our children's children to never allow this to happen again.
And so, Adam, let's go through your journey because you grew up as an Orthodox kid in Baltimore and you go to Yeshiva University. Obviously, Ryan Terrell, Tamir Goodman, that whole story really allows sort of the Jews to enter sports in the 21st century. What was your knowledge and really connection with the African American community before you really entered the Big Ten into really major college sports?
Yeah, I think growing up, it was far more limited than it is now in the professional and in the business world, but still growing up in Baltimore, which is, a 65% population African-American community, it was certainly a big part of who we were. My mother had gone to public school and had certainly attended classes and had friends that were African-Americans. And growing up in my house, that's just not the way things were. We didn't see things in a silo where we were only intended to hang out with people with exact like-minded faiths, but rather to search out and seek out and find people who we wanted to be friends with, who we could benefit from, who we could learn from. And, that was my exposure to it. And then in the summer of college, I spent a summer at Morgan State University, which is a historically Black college, and there were very few Caucasian males or females on that campus. And that gave me just another really unique opportunity to bond with people of different faiths, of different creeds, of different races. And I just felt from a young age, from my parents and from my personal experiences, that the bonds we build together with people of different faiths, of different creeds, of different races, that's the way we perfect this world. That's the way, at least from a Jewish standpoint, of tikkun olam, of building our world together, of sharing like-minded ideas, and perfecting who we are as people, generally speaking, of course.
And so then you come together in a very interesting way. With Adam, you're writing speeches for Richard Joel, the president of Yeshiva University. You meet Mark Wilf, who's the Wilf campus of Yeshiva University. Kevin's working with the Wilf family and the Vikings. And one day you tell Mark Wilf, also media past president of the Jewish Federation of North America, I'm going to work for you one day. And then you meet Kevin, and as we like to say, as you wrote in your letter, it's beshert. It was meant to be. When did you, Kevin, realize that this young kid, Adam Newman from Yeshiva University, writing speeches for Richard Joel at Yeshiva University, was going to be your deputy chief of staff when you really hit the big time?
I mean, I'm a big believer that, like you said, beshert in life, I truly, my whole life has been, epitomizes what probably the definition of beshert, is. I'm a big believer that if you allow God and you trust God to really work in your life, I view God as in a relationship where He is not going to force Himself on you. Mm-hmm. And He gives you direction, whether it's through the Torah or the Bible or the Quran or whatever the case may be, as far as your path to peace. But he's not going to be in your face. He's not going to force himself upon you. But I'm a big believer when you see someone and when you're around someone who you truly believe who loves God, who's not perfect but who loves God, and who has made the decision to truly let God connect the dots in their life, it's always attractive to me. So I would say even before Adam and I started working together at the Vikings, even the way he communicated was in a manner that his faith was what kept him focused and centered in life. And then, it's one thing for people to say it, and it's another thing for people to be about it. And I just watched his work ethic. He was not your normal kind of summer intern. I mean, he carried himself in a manner that he had been around there. He was really curious. He always asked, which is attractive to me. I always like the people who are able to answer the third or fourth question, because most people in life, I can say in business, can answer what I call the knowledge at a cocktail party, just generally speaking. But when you ask that second, third, fourth, fifth question, Adam was, even as a summer intern, was able to answer those questions. And then he was curious about those questions. And so he was always there. I mean, I was always at the office. And I don't think he did it intentionally. I think he was raised by two incredible parents in a household that said, do your best. And so I just watched him. And when you're around someone, even from an internship program, is that you take notice of that in regards to people work ethic. Because so many times you hire interns and they come to an internship and I'm not saying it's wrong, but they're as much excited about hanging out in the city and going to nightclubs and going to baseball games. All that stuff is fine. But when Adam came to Minnesota, even his first year, then when he kept coming back, he was about the work. He was about the work, and he was about his faith. And his faith was really powerful for me, being an Orthodox Jew. And and his Jewish faith so strong, and watching him how he kept the Sabbath sacred and would walk to temple no matter how far away we were, and stayed committed to a kosher diet, and all those different things are powerful, because what that says to me is that when someone makes a commitment to do it and follow their faith and to live by it, regardless of how difficult it becomes, as far as distance or food or all those different things, he was loyal and he was faithful. And when you see people who are faithful to God, then you know that they'll be faithful to you. And so that's something that I always that was very impressive to me. His work ethic is incredible. He's quite naturally highly intelligent. He's curious. He asks questions. He's sincere. He's honest. And those are the kind of people that you can build championship teams around.
I think you basically defined the word mensch, which I think, Adam, your parents would be very proud of you as well, but also our community as well. And Adam, speaking about everything that Commissioner Warren just spoke about, you gave a TEDx talk, I believe, to the yeshiva crowd. And this is what you said about one of the principles of sports, of don't do you. And not only did you say don't do you, but you went into the tradition of the story of Esther, another thing that actually Coach Bruce Pearl did during the Ukraine crisis as well. And this is what you said, and I'm going to talk about that.
Not doing you. Look no further than Queen Esther. Umi yodea im lies kazo sigat lamalchus. You think Esther wanted to go be with Achashverosh? You think that was her first choice? She could have easily said, whoa, I'm going to do me. That's my job. I'll do me. But no, she transcended herself. She decided to not just do her. She stepped out and she saved the Jewish people.
Adam, how do you don't do you in the job that you're doing as an Orthodox Jew, as Deputy Chief of Staff of the Big Ten?
Well, I think it starts from leadership at the top. Everything's about leadership, and that's why in my life I've always looked for leaders. I tell people regularly the greatest honor in my life is being my father's son. Commissioner Warren is what I would say loosely in Hebrew, a mavakesh, a seeker. He's someone who's consistently trying to do better in every area. It's not something that, oh, when it's convenient, I'll do better. It's not something when, I see an opportunity, I'll try and do better. He is consistently seeking to do better in his interpersonal relationships, in his relationship with God, and in his relationship with his family. And for me, to see that at the highest levels, when you would expect someone to not have that or to be jaded, I would say, in other professions that I've been in, or to be around a lot of other famous people, quote unquote, or leaders, Commissioner Warren is quite the opposite. It's almost like when they tell you as a kid, that's when you really could watch rated R movies, but as you get older, you should watch rated G movies because it's actually less appropriate. It's kind of like that. He's in the inverse. It's that as he gets stronger, as he makes bigger deals, as his character becomes even larger, not only in college sports, but in all of sports, in all of the United States of America and all of the world, he continues to remain grounded. He continues to care more about the details of people's life. I mean, this is the kind of person who's consistently calling people on their birthdays. This is the kind of person who 3 weeks ago, we were speaking to one of the major media partners that we actually ended up doing business with. It was a Friday afternoon. He's in the midst of probably the largest negotiation of his entire life. And I call him and he writes, "Can I call you back in 5?" And I wrote back to him in a text. He probably doesn't remember this. I said, "I actually can't. I'm making Sabbath in 3." And about a minute and a half later, my phone's ringing and it's him. And I'm shocked because he doesn't need to call me back. He could just say, "Have a good Sabbath." He doesn't have to respond at all. But he calls me back to wish me a good Sabbath. And I thought about it after that happened and I wrote it down. And I can't think of a time since we've been working together on a Friday or before a Jewish holiday, or he has not contacted me before to wish me a restful, peaceful, thoughtful, enjoyable break. And you ask about how to not be you when you're in an environment where everybody's allowing you to be you, and all that you need to do is stretch. All that you need is a willing heart. All that you need is to follow the path that he outlines. You find yourself in a really good position to be.
So your jobs is really not just about you, but in fact, it's about the student athletes. It's about these young kids, basically 19 to 24 years old, coming together on a field, on a court, in a community, and building that community. And what you just said about don't be you and how to be a leader, you really are advocating that on the biggest stage. This is what you said, Commissioner Warren, about why you really do what you do, and we'll talk about that in just a moment.
Just the Will family, as you alluded to in the during the introduction, was to afford me, especially a Black man, an opportunity to run all of their businesses in Minnesota for 15 years was truly a blessing. So I came into college athletics understanding of the importance and need, as Nita alluded to, of making sure that every decision we make is in the best interest of our student athletes. And that's the way that I start my morning in prayer. You know, we have nearly 10,000 student athletes, and I pray for the strength and the wisdom and the tenacity to make sure that every decision that I make, that we make collectively, is with the student athlete, you know, in mind.
So we talk about the leap of faith, but we also talk about the leap of action. What does it mean to pray for the tenacity of these 10,000 student athletes and to show them that you have their best interest in mind?
I mean, I've been on my hands and knees and face already 4 times already today. That's how I start my day, and I take breaks throughout the day just to ask for guidance and wisdom and pray for those for loved ones in my life and family and our senior leadership team, our school, their leadership, and ultimately our student athletes. And because I think the prayers is so powerful because it allows you quiet time and a time and energy to really listen to God. I mean, one of the things that I probably is most challenging for me is your time in these jobs, these opportunities. I don't even call them jobs anymore. These platforms, your time is not your time, and so I literally, and that's why I savor. I adore my wife and my children, and my dear friends and family, but I savor that time with them. But I really also just embrace my prayer time and my workout time, because that's really the only time that I have to be in communion, with God. And I'm one of those folks, I get in public, I get my meals interrupted. That doesn't bother me. That's okay. I can stop eating and start back eating. But like my workout time, that 45 minutes is kind of my time to really hear my kind of inner spirit and soul. That's why prayer time is so, important to me. So I start my day on my hands and knees. I end my day on my hands and knees, and I have those periods of time, throughout the day. But I think that's the biggest challenge that I would say, and Adam and I have talked about this, and my son went to a football camp probably 7-8 years ago, and one of the coaches gave a speech on the illusion of choice. And it actually, it was so powerful. And as I studied that, what the message was, it was actually Coach Saban at Alabama. My son had gone to a football camp there, and this was his closing comments to the campers. And he said, the illusion of choice is that, there's an illusion that the more successful, the more desirous you are for success, the larger your footprint grows, all of those different things, that the more that becomes, the more you're blessed with that you actually have more choices. But he called it the illusion of choice. It really is the opposite. That as your footprint grows and the more God blesses you and the more successful you become, and he was talking to these young high school student athletes. My son was, I think, going into a sophomore year. He said a lot of people here strive to, play major college football. You want scholarships, and you think as you start catching more touchdowns and making more tackles and being a better high school player, that you'll be able to do more. And it's just the opposite. You actually will be able to do less. And I look at my life now, I have exposure to more, but what I can really do now is much less than I could do 10 years ago, and much less than I can do 20 years ago and 30 years ago. It's the illusion of choice. And I think where a lot of executives or people get twisted around in their life, they believe the more money they make, the longer titles they get, the more access they have access to, the more people that they know, well, the more that they can do. And that's not the case. And so I know for me, I'm in a perpetual, fishbowl. And and I say, folks, the only time that I'll always be who I am, but the only time that I really can be 100% relaxed is when I'm in my home, environment with those people that I love and trust. And that's why, like Adam plays such an important role, because you need individuals like Adam in your life, where you can have open and honest communication, who will tell you the truth, and sometimes, and I'm always just struck, if you even think of the book of Job and the Bible, when he was really sick, some of his friends, they didn't even talk. I mean, they would just go and sit with them. And I always say that is, I can tell a true friend is that if we could, could we take a 6 or 8 or 10 hour car ride and not say anything and still be comfortable? I think that's when I really realized that my wife Greta and I were destined to be married, because we didn't have to always be talking to each other. And I think you can really tell how connected you are with someone, just even in their presence says so many words. So, and you need that, because these seats they're hot, they're complicated, they're lonely, and you need people around you. And fortunately, I have individuals like Adam. I have one of my executive assistants, May Davis, who and I started working together 32 years ago, right when I graduated from law school. Another one, Emily Rooney, who's been with me for over 10 years, and then my wife and my kids. And that support system is really, important, because so many times you need just honesty, but so many times you just need people sitting in the room, with you, who can, as I call, grieve with you in a corporate manner, just to be there, and just to hear you kind of think out loud. And because there are many days that I don't have the answers, that I've prayed about it, and I trust that God will deliver the answers back to me, but it hasn't happened yet. But during that period of time, I just need some time to be able to communicate about that. And I don't need folks trying to give me the answers, because the answer that I'm really looking for and waiting for will come from God. But to have individuals like Adam and his wife Rachel, who are devout and Orthodox, follow their Orthodox Jewish faith so strongly, and who pray for you and you pray for them, it's amazing how God will deliver the answer to all of us at the right time, for the right reasons, for the right people.
So it's interesting, because on our high holy days, we say the prayer Shema Kolenu, which means God hear our prayer. But it doesn't necessarily mean that God's going to give us the answers. Sometimes actually the answer is no, we're just not hearing that. And so you mentioned the book of Job. Adam, any book that you look to in the Torah, or for inspiration in the work that you do outside of the Jewish world?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look a lot throughout the story of Moses, and seeing his leadership style and seeing how difficult it was for him at first. He had a lisp, and he was told he had to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. He wasn't, the ideal candidate for that. And, you see his upbringing and where he was. And then, of course, even his internal strife sometimes with his brother and his sister, in matters of how he was treating his wife and how devout he had to be to God, and the type of leader that he was, and his humility, which was so striking. Because I think oftentimes you think of someone in a position of power, a number one, a commissioner, and you think of somebody who must have a big ego or must have, very broad shoulders. And I think Moses taught us that leadership really is about humility. And humility, as Simon Sinek likes to say, is really just being open to the ideas of others. And I think that's a really powerful way to think about humility, because humility is not just about being meek. And when I think about the commissioner, and I think about how intertwined the Big Ten has become with my faith, and how the type of leadership that he runs, I think he's, the picturesque card for someone who's humble, because he knows where it all comes from. He attributes it to God. He attributes it to his family. He attributes it to his friends. I mean, even now, you're not going to catch him in a conversation where he's not going to push off some of the praise to other people. That's just not the kind of person that he is. And I think that's the reason why, in my estimation, knowing him 7 or 8 years, he's been so successful, because he has people that really want to work for him. He has people that want to grind for him. He has people that want to take bullets for him. You don't earn that just because you exist. You don't earn that because you're powerful. You don't earn that because you have money. You earn that because of the respect you give to other people. You earn that by showing people that their dreams are part of your dreams. And that's why, heck, we prayed this morning at 7 a.m. together. And especially lately, one of his biggest dreams and one of his biggest charges has been keep your dreams on fire. Keep your dreams alive. And every time he says that, I feel a rush within me of, wow, like he's really thinking about my dreams. He's not just thinking about his. He's thinking about the community's dreams. He's thinking about the student athletes' dreams. And really, really powerful. I think it resonates very deeply with our constituencies.
And really, another word for dreams is opportunities. And, you know, just this past weekend with the Nebraska Northwestern not playing in Nebraska or in Chicago, but across the ocean in the United Kingdom, you speak about opportunities. And this is what you said about when the Big Ten grows, obviously more than 10 teams from Chicago to Los Angeles to New York, really a national movement. This is what you said it's really about.
I've been a household of educators. My father was a student athlete at Arizona State, was a college professor at Arizona State. My mother was a school teacher and librarian. So academics is incredibly important to Greta, to me, to my family, to what I do on a daily basis. It's something that I take very seriously. So because of that, I always think through the opportunities, as you alluded to, Dennis, of not of the issues or the problems, but what are the opportunities that now that we are across 4 time zones, now that we do have schools in 2024 that will reach from New York, New Jersey to Los Angeles, what are the different cultural elements in each one of those environments? Not only in the cities, but with their alumni, that we could even fortify our educational relationship with our student athletes.
So, Commissioner, you said that you love to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And a lot of the decisions that you're making, with the $7 billion TV deal or the expansion of the Big Ten, you're making a lot of sports fans uncomfortable in a comfortable way. But it's really about what you just said, about opportunity. So take the 15-year-old kid right now who's a great athlete who wants to join the Big Ten in 2 years. What opportunities are they going to see educationally about the world that will make their life different when they leave the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for me, Adam has heard me say this before, and it's probably being a lawyer, that I every time I get ready to start, say, the process of a deal or the makings of a deal, I always, will almost mentally, and sometimes I do it physically, what's the press conference look like? Well, what does the press release look like? What does the term sheet look like? This is even before we start the communication. So I think it's a big, it's important for us as leaders in all industries, but especially in the sports industry, to make sure that we, keep the kind of the end in mind for our student athletes. And I give, an example. I was fortunate to play my first couple of years in college basketball at the University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
And so I went to school at 17. I turned 18 in November. We played in the Suntory Ball, which I believe was in December. So it was 1 month after my 18th birthday. I had just turned 18 years old. I didn't have a passport. I had never traveled abroad. And so to be able to get a passport, and we played in the Suntory Ball in Japan, and it was University of Pennsylvania versus Oregon State and Louisville. It was a round-robin tournament. We played Oregon State, and then we played Louisville. Louisville, I believe, was #1 in the country. They had a recent national championship. And so as a true freshman, to be able to tie those red shoes up and go on that court in Japan and to play, played 6 minutes as a true freshman, had just had my 18th birthday, scored 6 points. But I remember calling my parents from the hotel, and I don't know why I just remember this number, but the call when I checked out of the hotel, the phone call, and at the time it seemed like so much money, and it was, the phone call was $26 because I actually, that's pre-cell phone, so you had to call.
I'll collect.
But I was so moved to be in Japan playing college basketball, and I just had to call my parents and my dad. And so a lot of my per diem money was eaten up by that one phone call, but it was such a powerful moment. And why do I share that story is what that one trip to Japan, going on the subway there and going to different districts, and it shrunk the world for me. And it showed me that, yeah, individuals may look differently, they may speak differently, but they're all the same. They all want to be loved. They all want to be encouraged. They all want to be empowered. They all want to be told they can be great. And so, therefore, I know how important it is. Some of the things we've been blessed to do under, Adam's leadership with mental health and wellness, and having the game in Ireland. I was able to go over the weekend. It was a fast trip, but to see these young student athletes on Nebraska Northwestern, and some of the older, coaches, just to embrace this opportunity to go to Dublin to learn and to grow. What we did in Selma, Alabama, and Montgomery, Alabama this summer with the Equality Coalition. I'm just a big believer is that the more that we can provide platforms for our student athletes, their families, to be in and around opportunities to grow, that you become more of a whole person. And so travel is important. As Adam started off, as he spent that time in Morgan State, spending time with those who may be different from you. Part of the reason why racism can take hold is that if you never have an environment to meet the people who you're not supposed to like, that's how racism works. And so people who want to promote racism don't want different people to meet, because when you meet them, you realize they really are the same. They have the same interests. And that's why, if you notice, you look at young kids, you go to a kindergarten class, a first grade class, second grade class, there is no racism because it's a learned behavior. And so what the system, the sooner we can recognize that the way that you can build, racism and tear this world apart by the seams is that you keep people separate. But I guarantee on these calls, if you were able to pour out what's in your heart, and Adam can pour out what's in his heart, and I poured out my heart, is that there are all kinds of issues. We're dealing with personal issues. We're dealing with family issues. We're dealing with spouse issues and parent issues and in-law issues and kid issues and all those different kind of things. And so the more that we can come together and talk, and back to the book of Job, one of the reasons why I love the Bible, but that book does something, because you look how he started. He was the man. He had it all. But he went through that period in his life where he lost it all. But you look at the end of the book of Job, the reason why I like it so much is that basically he was blessed with double. He ended up getting a double portion. And why? Is because he held in there. So I'm a big believer. I not only love storytelling, but I'm a big believer in the stories of people's life. And the people that I really admire and respect are those individuals who have a story. And if I meet with someone or interview with someone or talk with someone, or someone says, I want to work at the Big Ten, and I ask them and they say, oh yeah, I was born and that was great. I've never scraped my knee and never got a tooth knocked out, and everything went perfectly well. There's nothing that I, struggle with. I'm not too interested in them being around me, because I know, this world it's all about. That's why I love sports so much. It's about, you watch a football game, but especially a basketball game. It's always about one who can create the run and who can withstand the run. And those were really the best basketball teams I had been on, is that we could create a run, but then we could withstand a run. And there's so many people in life who are able to participate in the run if someone creates it, but they can't withstand the run. And there may be games that you're up, 18 points, and then they cut the lead to 12, and it goes up to 18, they cut it to 4, and that's how the essence of life, and that's really what the last couple of years here at the Big Ten was. People, not Adam, but there were many people, people ask me right now, am I surprised to be sitting where we are with, incredible network partners and being blessed with USC and UCLA and the conference doing well, and volleyball media days and basketball media days and football media days and top-ranked teams. I'm not surprised. But there are a lot of people who, during that period of COVID, they gave up. They really did give up. They didn't think we would be able to make it. So those are the things I not only admire, but I really look for people in a time of crisis, because that's when you get an opportunity to understand what kind of person is made of. Anyone, if I call anyone and said, hey, you want to ride with me? Because we got a huge announcement to make where we're signing, a very creative media deal, or we got a huge announcement, USC and UCLA are coming. There are a lot of people who put on a nice suit or a nice dress and go with you to be there. But those aren't the people. That's the easy part. The people that I want to have around me are in the middle of COVID, when literally your back is against the wall and there are not any medical answers, that it really is just prayers, faith in God, is trying to figure out what the right thing to do. and always remembering that you're doing this for the student athlete, that those are people that I want. And I'll tell you right now, there's a handful of people, they know who they are, that stood there with me, you know, my family, and then certain people at the office like Adam who held in there. But there are a lot of people who ran for the shade trees and were kind of looking around the tree. And then once it got better, then they came out and said, we were always there with you. But they really weren't. And so I'm always, you know, intrigued and attracted by those people who are sturdy and who are in there when the sun is out, but who are in there when the turbulence is heavy. And that's how you build a relationship that lasts forever.
So one of the opportunities you mentioned is travel, and the idea that it shrunk the world. And one team that did that, I think, pretty amazing was actually Auburn with Coach Bruce Pearl, who took his team of mostly African-American athletes to the land of Israel with ESPN, with Jay Billis, with Roxy Bernstein. The pictures that he was posting in Bethlehem with the Arab community, with the African-American kids baptizing the Jordan River. And that story was really telling, not just to the Jewish community, but also to the outside world. And he just mentioned that he's trying to get other college teams to take that trip. Adam and Commissioner Warren, do you see that happening with maybe some Big Ten teams in the next couple of years?
I'm a big believer that any time you can expand and grow, always look for the positive energy. One thing COVID taught us is that, you know, the classroom is important, but there's so many other ways to learn. And so we're constantly looking for opportunities on an international basis to provide our student athletes with an opportunity to learn and to meet new people. And that's what makes the Big Life series so special is, you know, there are individuals, you know, this summer when we went to Selma, Montgomery, Alabama, had never really been into the South, and who had kind of, you know, heard about and understood at a high level about, you know, slavery and lynchings and racism, but to really go through that experience and, you know, realize that 54-mile walk. And so one of the things I challenged myself on, and everyone on the trip, I asked everyone, like, what are you willing to walk 54 miles for over a 5-day period? I mean, really, are you so, when people say, I believe in voting, really? Would you have been willing to walk 54 miles against opposition? Do you believe in voting when you can get in your car and drive to the polls and vote, put a little red sticker on your jacket and says, I voted? But you know, if you had a sick child or a sick spouse, would you walk 54 miles to get them a treatment to save their life? Yes. And so that's always the judge. I want to know what people are willing to walk, you know, 54 miles for, and how that moves them.
So I want to ask one last question about your childhood, and then one final question about the three really agendas that you have within the Big Ten: financial literacy, voter registration that you just mentioned, and Adam with the mental health and wellness. As a child, something that really shaped your life was being in a hospital bed because I believe you were hit by a car, and you called it pool time. And that time in the pool that really allowed you to think about life was all about really led to a lot of the faith that, as you said on HBO Real Sports, Brian Gumbel, that faith really has directed everything that you have done and led to the success that you've spoken about over this last several minutes as well. And then you also say 1440. It's a number I never heard. I've heard 24/7. I heard 365. The 1440 are the number of minutes in the day. How does the experience that you had as a child, almost losing your life, allow you to be grateful for the position that you are in today and valuing that 1440 in your life?
Yeah, because I think what the lesson I take away from it is so many times in life, and that's just the way the world is, we're conditioned to focus, kind of like we just talked about, on the big stuff. But some of the greatest moments in my life are, you know, the smallest segments of time. And, you know, you always think about just how just a little bit can change your life, positive or negative, either other way. You know, if that car was going one more mile faster, would I have survived? Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, maybe that would have just been that extra speed that would have killed me. You know, and when the doctor did surgery on my leg and other parts of my body, if they were just a little, when he reset my leg, if it had been, you know, just a little off and it didn't set properly. I mean, those are things that I really, you know, think about. I mean, you know, even me and my wife, you know, Greta, I mean, you think about that. I take a job. I'm at Notre Dame. I have a job to go back to Phoenix. I accept this job from Mike Glazier. It goes to Chicago, but even before I graduated, it moves to Overland Park, Kansas. You know, I think about those different things. What happened if Mike Slive had kept his law firm in Chicago? You know, I don't meet Greta. We don't have kids. You know, your life changes. So I'm always thinking about those little, when you say 1440, I wouldn't have a Super Bowl ring and a Super Bowl trophy if Mike Jones doesn't make a tackle on the 1 yard line. So you think all the season, I tell people we have 5 Hall of Famers. We got a Hall of Fame coach. We scored the most points. We're the greatest show on turf. We were, you know, had 13-3. I mean, all the thing, and it comes down to one tackle on the 1 yard line. And if Mike Jones doesn't make that tackle, he makes a misstep. He misses the tackle. We lose that game. People don't remember it. So I think that's one of the reasons why the 1440 means so much to me is that what are decisions today that may come in a split second, or it may seem like one innocuous meeting or one phone call that just seems like a normal phone call that morphs into something that changes the world. And so I just want to make sure, I think that's why it's really important, I know for me, to always try to be in the moment, but try to be really focused, because that one decision can make the world great. And I hope as we look back 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, I hope 100 years from now that people are saying, you know what, the Big Ten between 2020, when Kevin started there, when however long I work here, made some decisions that 100 years later are still changing the world.
So one of those is mental health and awareness as well. We here at Sinai Temple during COVID started a Sinai Temple Mental Health Center, which was pretty revolutionary for a synagogue in these days. That you go outside of the faith world and do that stuff. Adam, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis to help the mental well-being of athletes who are under a lot of pressure to not just perform, but to take their skills to the highest level?
Yeah, athletes are under, for certain, a unique amount of stress and have a unique amount of mental health issues that need to be confronted. I think we're seeing that across the board globally, but we're also seeing it specifically with student athletes. One of the deliverables that the commissioner had was to basically take 2 terrific individuals from all 14 of our institutions and put them on a cabinet, which had never been done before in all of intercollegiate sports, and with the sole goal of trying to improve mental health and wellness on campus. And to date, we've done a lot of great things. Each campus has increased therapists on campus. We've increased practice measures that are related towards mental health and wellness. We've distributed the Calm app, which is a relaxation application, to over 19,000 members of our Big Ten family, including every single full-time working member of the athletic departments, all student athletes, all of our conference staff. And something that's really poignant to me that should give you insight into how we view mental health is, I remember Kevin and I were thinking, as he alluded to earlier, what's the ribbon cutting, right? Like what's the Nirvana? What's the Disney World? What does this look like in the end? And Kevin turned to me and he said, one person for one moment in time feeling a little bit better. That's it. That's how we'll know if we've been successful. And I don't need to tell you how many letters and emails and text messages we've received. We're nearing 1 million total sessions. So not just downloads, like viewable sessions on the Calm app. We've received letters about how it's been life-saving. But for us, once again, I mean, when you're able to have that goal of one human being doing a little bit better for one moment in time, it really, in Kevin's words, it shrinks the world. It starts making you realize on that end that everybody's struggling. How can we make sure they're struggling a little bit less? So we're continuing to build programming around it. We're hoping to have an on-site visit with all of our wonderful practitioners from across our Big Ten institutions around our football championship game, again, to show the equal importance of not just playing football in our highest revenue generating sport, but also the importance of ensuring that our community is healthy and well. And I'll conclude with this, and it's really Kevin's story, but you mentioned the bike and the pool time. But when Kevin was in the hospital, I think for over a year in Arizona, he recalls, not fondly, that almost nobody asked him at any point how he was doing mentally. I mean, they would check in on him and ask, how's the femur? How's the leg? How are you feeling? How is this happening? What are you eating? But no one said, like, how are you feeling emotionally from a whole life? Almost taken away, in one of those 1440 moments. And now you're here. And what's next? And what's next is not clear at all. What's next is not something that was given. It wasn't promised. And for Kevin to maintain that belief And to see that belief at such a young age now inform the way that he leads now, I mean, that's where you're starting to see a person develop. That's where you're seeing the graduation of a human being. And I think that's why when Kevin mentions that some people kind of fell off the ship and weren't as invested when things were a little bit tougher, that's why for the people that are in line and the people that are family and the people that are looking him in the eye and telling him the truth and feeling that connection to his leadership style, that's why that never wavers. And what's ironic about that is that even in the darkest moments, it still doesn't waver. It doesn't even begin to flicker or waver, because you just know in your heart that this is the person you want to be working with. This is the leader that's inspired the people around you. And this is why the Big Ten is finding itself in an incredible position with great success, especially over these past few months.
So, Commissioner Adam, leave us with a blessing in this podcast about faith and sports. What's the blessing to the people watching, the people interested in what's next?
Adam, you can go first.
I'll be a little bit repetitive, but I'll tell people, keep your dreams alive. You know, don't give up on them because things get tough. It's not easy. There's no easy path to get anything that you want, whether it's personally or professionally. It's really challenging. And if you allow those challenges to allow you to settle for something or live something a little bit mediocre, you'll be sad for it. And what you should do really is surround yourself around people who will help you challenge yourself and say, that's not your dream. That's not what you told me you wanted a year ago. Did something change? And if it didn't change, did it just get old? Did it lag? Did you not have the inspiration? How's your prayer life? How are your friends? How are your family? So, you know, my prayer for this group and for those listening is just keep your dreams alive, really just pronounced and alive. Put them on a bulletin board, write them down, write them on your hand, talk to your family about them. Don't be ashamed about them. Kevin has a concept that I love. He calls it the Dream Chuckle. And what he says is that if you tell someone your dream, and I'll pick on accountants only because my parents are accountants, and I say, hey, Mom, Dad, I really want to be an accountant when I get older. And they go, yeah, that kind of makes sense for you. You're probably not leaving past the shore. You're probably right in those shallow waters. But if you go to your mom in 9th grade and you say, Mom, I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to walk on the moon. And then people start laughing a little bit. They can't really appreciate it. They don't understand what's happening with you. That's when you know you're really getting somewhere. You know you're testing people's boundaries. You know that you're finding a dream. So, you know, one of the great things about this conference, and I think what we're doing for our student athletes, is we're keeping people's dreams alive on and off the field, because we know that a lot of them will not be playing sports, you know, once they graduate. But we want their dreams alive. We want them well, and we want them flourishing, and we want this conference to be a launching pad for the rest of their careers, and for them to look back and say, wow, during those 4 or 5 years, and now with transfer and COVID, 6 years, they found time to keep their dreams alive, to clear, burning, and this is what launched them to do what was next.
Yeah, I mean, Adam said it great. I think the biggest thing, Rabbi, is that, you know, people have to understand that you know, life is a challenge, and if you're looking for a quick fix, that it doesn't work that way. And I say this to my kids, my children, my personal children all the time, is that my mom would always say, keep your hand in God's hand. That if your hand is in God's hand, that you really don't have anything to worry about. That you just need to go with the plan. And so when it looks shaky and it's cloudy, that you got to realize. So that's what I asked myself: is my hand in God's hand today? I asked myself that this morning, and if the answer is yes, then I don't have anything to worry about. Now, if you ask yourself, is your hand in God's hand, and the answer is no, then yeah, you probably do need to worry. But just keep your hand in God's hand, and he has such a beautiful way of constantly winking at us. And that's when I know that I'm on the right track. Even in the middle of COVID, when I was getting death threats, and, you know, people were calling for my head and my job, and, you know, everything, that every once in a while, you know, God would give what I call a God wink to carry me to the next day. And then now, as I look back over it, you know, I was able to survive, you know, not for my education or intelligence or who I knew or hard work. It was because my hand was in, you know, God's hand. And so I'm a big believer in that, and just looking for those constant lessons. It may be, you know, a child. It may be a kind word from someone, something that you see. I remember my wife and I were in London a couple months ago during Wimbledon, because for our 30th wedding anniversary. She loves tennis, is a tennis player, and it's something we had planned to do. It was right in the middle of this USC UCLA, right literally the day that we got the final commitment, the day that I was scheduled to have conversations and to wrap all this up. It was the day right before the vote we were going to take with our chancellors and presidents. It was not a fait accompli that this would work. There were a lot of moving parts. You know, California was 8 hours behind. I mean, it was moving apart. And I was in deep prayer that morning. I got a great workout. And in between matches, it's like the rain held off, and then it was raining. And I was walking into a house in London, and all of a sudden I looked up and there was a rainbow. Wow. And I was like, wow. I mean, I get emotional talking about it because I was really concerned, didn't lose faith, but you know, a lot of people were putting their careers and reputation, you know, on the line. This was impacting people's lives. I was taking that to heart. And I was praying all day, even at Wimbledon, throughout the day, saying, God, you know, please give me a sign that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons for our student athletes, that I'm not missing anything. Just please speak to me. I mean, the whole day, and I didn't, you know, I wasn't hearing back. My soul was still like, I hope this is the right thing to do. I believe it is. It says it is. And then all of a sudden I saw probably the most beautiful rainbow that I've ever seen in my life. And that was affirmation that this is the right thing to do. The day finished strong. We voted the next morning, and because, you know, with the time change, everything, you know, passed. And so those are things that I just would encourage people, that God is constantly speaking through us, through so many other people in so many other different ways. And just don't lose hope. Keep your hand in God's hand. Believe in God. Trust God. Let him or her connect the dots for you, and just enjoy life, because it does go fast.
So you took the words not out of my mouth, but actually out of the words of our tradition. In Hebrew, Ner Adonai Nishmat Ha'adam, that the soul, the fire burning from God, is actually the candle of God was in the soul of each human being. That, my friends, is what we have seen this morning here. Rabbi on the sidelines, Commissioner Kevin Warren of the Big Ten, Adam Newman, Chief of Staff of the Big Ten. We are so excited to join you on your journey with USC, UCLA here out in California. We hope that when you come to LA, we're going to be hosting you here at Sinai Temple and having amazing conversation of faith and sports. Commissioner Adam, it's so great to have you. Have a wonderful day.